Hello, welcome to my video about Oxford's traffic filters. This is accurate information about what's going to happen and how it might affect you. What I'm going to cover today is why is the trial happening? Why is the county doing this? Then the details of the scheme in some level of detail, so you should leave it understanding literally what's going to happen, the passes, the locations, and then practical information which might help. But first of all, who am I? I'm Zuhura Plummer. I'm the campaign director of Oxfordshire Liveable Streets, and we're an organisation that wants to see a clean, healthy Oxford where everyone can move around easily, whether you're driving, getting the bus, cycling, walking, whatever. We do support the filters. Straight up tell you that now. Nobody is neutral about traffic policies in Oxford, so you can bear that in mind while I talk. But our main focus is helping people to understand. Like, I literally just want people to have the information as simply as possible, and then you can understand what's happening. So this is all just good, simple, accurate information. We're not funded by Oxfordshire County Council. This is our own video. They don't even know I'm doing it. We're funded by the Foundation for Integrated Transport and our membership, which are people across Oxfordshire. So we're going to start with school holiday traffic. So when the schools are out, you get on the road and you're driving along, because I drive too, and it's so much less traffic and you're like, yes, schools are out, yeah, great. And then when schools come back and it's term time again, you're like, oh, for good, so much traffic, and you realise immediately, why is it all, and then your schools are back. But that difference is actually only about 10 to 15% more cars on the road. But it's huge, like we really, really notice it, but it's actually not very many. It's only 10 to 15%. So what I'd like you to think about is what it would feel like if you had the same amount of difference, but on top of the term time traffic. So imagine like the worst state and then like 15% more on top. And I think that would feel pretty awful. And the reason I'm asking you to think about that is because that is kind of what we're facing in Oxfordshire. So we're in many ways lucky to live in a very economically productive area. We've got lots of jobs in the region. It's an investment area between Oxford and Cambridge that covers Milton Keynes and Luton, and lots of tech and innovation and skilled jobs coming to the area. An awful lot of homes coming as well. We need affordable housing, but it is an awful lot of homes that are planned. But even just on a smaller scale within Oxfordshire, we've had a rise in population. So in the last census decade, 2011 to 2021, Oxfordshire saw an 11% rise in population, and we're due to have a 15% rise in population in the next census decade. And we have 100,000 homes which have been built or are about to be built across the county. So we're about halfway through that period, and many of you will know and see the homes going up all around Oxford. This map is from Network Rail, and the darker blue areas are the areas that have the most number of homes, the most increase in population density. And as you can see, the ones I've circled are ones that are really like quite close to Oxford and will be really quite dependent on Oxford for work, leisure, hospital trips, coming in and out for whatever reason. Many of the homes around Oxfordshire will just be doing their own thing and going off to other places and going down to Swindon or whatever. So they won't all be coming into Oxford. But the thing is, it is a lot of more cars on the road. So 100,000 more houses means about 142,000 more cars on the road, because it's 1.42 cars per household in the southeast. So even if just 10% of those cars drive into Oxford on a daily basis or regularly, that is a huge, huge increase for Oxford. To give you a sense, Oxford has probably about 50,000 cars in it. So 142,000 cars is about three Oxfords worth of cars around the county. So yeah, it's a lot, and the county are not responsible for where the houses go. They don't get to choose. That's the district councils, and sometimes Westminster kind of forces them to have housing, but the county is responsible for the roads. So they're in a very unenviable position of having to deal with the increase in the number of cars on the road, but not having a lot of control of where the houses go. So at the moment, we're in a negative loop. Cars are like the default way that most people get around, especially coming in from more rural areas into the city. Increases, and when congestion increases, the buses slow down. You can't rely on them. They're late. You can't be sure they're going to get you to work. So people stop using them. The routes get cut. And you also have horrible cycling and walking. And so people have no choice but to drive. And so everybody's making like a sensible, rational decision in their own life to drive most of the time, but it's because they haven't got any other choices. And the problem with negative loops is they're self-reinforcing, right? So the more the congestion increases, the more the buses are cut, the more people have no choice to drive. So we've got to do something to get out of the negative loop. I do think we can have the same growth, we can have city, like with the innovation and tech and industries coming to Oxfordshire, but keep the cars for those who really, really need to use them, the roads for those who really need to use them. So the county have come up with a target of 1 in 4 motor journeys changing to another way by 2030. It's not all the traffic filters, there's other things as well, but the traffic filters are the first step. And they think if that happens, then the roads will be clear enough that we can keep functioning as a kind of city and city area. And the key way that this is going to happen is buses. Buses are the workhorses of the city. We have to get the buses faster. They're the way that most people can change and most people can swap. And then we've got lift shares, which will be really important at some places, like some big employers, maybe like the JR, BMW, maybe a couple of other, some of the schools in the centre of Oxford. They'd be really good for like helping with that peak time traffic. And then there's bikes as well. Not going to work for everyone, but might work for really important 5-10% of people. And then there's delivery innovation, which is slightly separate from the traffic filters, but is another way that's going to be important for reducing the number of motor journeys. So if we got faster and more buses and more bus routes and more frequency and you know, serving different places, and you have cycling and walking, people have other choices but to drive. And then you get fewer cars on the road, and then you get the buses stay nice and fast, nice and reliable, put different routes on, extend the routes, and you end up with a positive loop. And so lots of people say to me, okay, I get we need to do something, but can we not have the buses faster first? You need to speed up the buses before taking away the car journeys. And there really are two sides of the same coin. And the only thing that the county council can do to speed up the buses is put in bus lanes. That's pretty much the only thing they can really do to speed up buses. And there are bus lanes in almost every arterial road into Oxford that you can fit a bus lane at the moment. You can't fit one on Cowley Road, the Iffley Road and the Abingdon Road. So you've got them on the other roads. So there's no space really to speed up the buses without focusing on the cars on the road. So the county have decided to start the positive loop here with fewer cars on the road, and they've decided on traffic filters. So the traffic filters are like a single point of change where everyone has to consider or reconsider how they're travelling. But a lot of people are thinking about it across the city and across all of the commuting places into the city. And you need that point where everybody does it at the same time, because that will spark from the negative loop into the positive loop. If you just have tiny, tiny little incremental changes, you don't get the cut in congestion and you don't get those faster buses that actually turns it into a positive loop that's self-reinforcing, because it doesn't happen like enough. You need a decent chunk of cars off the road, and then the buses actually speed up enough that you notice them, and then people start using them, and then you're away, basically. You've got to do something to get to that point. And they have chosen traffic filters. So the immediate gains are the buses. Traffic is expected to be down about 20% across the city within the ring road and 35% within the centre. That's absolutely huge. Think back to that 10 to 15% school holiday times. This is really, really big. So the buses will get faster. And this is like pretty much all buses coming in and out of Oxford. And that frees up capacity on the bus routes. So at the moment, the bus companies are putting on more buses and drivers than they need to fulfill a service, because it's unreliable. But if it's definitely going to be reliable and definitely going to know that there's less traffic, you can take off a few buses and a few bus drivers on each route and put them onto other routes. So you have more frequency on routes, or you have it longer, like extended routes into different places, or you have new routes, like brand new routes. And they've promised that all of the productivity savings from the filters will be reinvested into the services. You have the 159 new electric buses, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard or seen. They're absolutely great. They go around Oxford, they are really smooth, and they're very, very clean, so no dirty exhaust pipe emissions. And they came about because of the traffic filter decision. So the bus company said, we want to invest in a new fleet, but we've got to get the buses moving faster to make it worth our while. And so the traffic filters and the electric buses, the decisions were interlinked. Then you've got new bus routes. So on the first day of the filters, we're going to have all of these improved frequencies or improvements to routes. The really exciting one is a brand new route, the 600, which is going to start in Redbridge Park and Ride, and it's going to go down to the Science Park and North Philbrook and Greater Lees, and then up Holloway to the Churchill, the Knock, Brooks, John Radcliffe and to Thornhill Park and Ride. So brand new bus route, and that's happening as a direct result of the filters. And then the other really exciting one is this H2 bus route. So it comes in from Carterton and Witney and it goes directly to the JR and then Brooks and then to the Churchill. And that one is going to double in frequency basically. So it's going to become actually a good service that people will be able to use to get to the John Radcliffe directly. Now, the other thing about the buses, which you'll notice that this is called the Eastern Arc bus route map. The bus companies in the county really want to get the buses moving in the eastern part of the city, like in a kind of loop or like an orbit around the eastern part of the city, because the majority of the population of Oxford live in east and northeast Oxford. And at the moment, a lot of the time you have to go into the centre of town, change and come back again. And it's a real barrier to using the bus. And so if you focus your bus routes so that people can get up and down within that part of the city without having to always go into the centre, you get people out of the cars and it'll be much more useful. So the other immediate gains are a cleaner city. So nitrous oxide is a horrible, horrible chemical. It comes mainly from exhaust pipes, and if we could see it, we would do something about it. I swear we would. It stunts lungs, it affects unborn babies, it affects older people, it affects all kinds of people. And when you bring in the traffic filters, it should look like this. So this is the 2019 levels are the last set of baseline data that the county had and before the pandemic. And this is what it's predicted to look like with the filters. So it's modelled. And this is the city centre. Now there's three things going on here. You've got the natural electrification of vehicles, so people have just gotten more electric cars over time, slowly. But the two big ones that have made this change is the buses going electric due to the filters and people driving less through the centre of town due to the filters. So it's absolutely huge. You can see how stark the difference is. Then another set of immediate gains are much safer roads. So it's predicted that 5 fewer casualties from people who walk, 11 fewer casualties from people who drive, and 18 fewer casualties from people who cycle. This is every year. So this is, again, 34 people who are not going to hospital, not being killed or seriously injured or being hurt or being traumatised, and people not having to care for them, and the NHS not having to care for them. And the NHS is one of the reasons that I really believe in the traffic filters. And it is really struggling at the moment for a whole range of reasons, some of which are outside the scope of this video. But one of the reasons it's struggling so much is basically because we are all being so much more sedentary than we used to be. So our bodies are designed to move around a lot, but computers, sitting at desks and sitting in cars are one of the reasons we end up not moving very much as a society. And the Royal College of Surgeons have said that exercise is the miracle cure to fix the NHS and social care. And I mean, that is what we all want to do, right? Like, it's a big challenge. And the reason is it just massively reduces your risk of breast cancer by 25%, dementia by 30%, depression by 30%, heart disease by 40%, type 2 diabetes by 40%, osteoporosis by 50%. That is absolutely huge. Like, those numbers, they blow my mind. And that's just by being physically active for 20 minutes a day. And so much money is spent on these things in the NHS. And for me, it's kind of like you have to make it really easy for people to make better choices. So at the moment, you look at the car and you think, oh, should I drive or should I walk and get the bus? And you're like, oh, I'll just drive, it's easier. And you're used to driving and it's your habit and whatever. And I know that. But with the traffic filters, you're like, oh, it's a bit of a pain because I can't go through that filter to go out that way. And then, okay, actually the buses are a bit faster now. Okay, I'll walk to the bus stop and I'll get the bus. And it's like all these micro decisions are being made on a daily basis by everybody all the time. And you've just got to make it easier to make a better decision. And that's gonna help the NHS, it's gonna help everyone in their lives. So I think we'd all agree there is a problem. Nobody I speak to is like, no, the traffic is fine in Oxford. But a lot of people are like, we should do something about it. Yes, we should do something. So I'm like, okay, well, there's traffic filters that are planned. And they're like, oh, no, not those. I'm like, oh, okay, what would you have preferred a congestion charge? And they're like, no, not congestion charge. And so I'm like, okay, would you have preferred like a third thing that this other city's doing? And they're like, no, not that either. So I'm like, okay, so do you really want to do something? Because doing something involves picking one of those policies and actually doing it. And you can spend a very long time talking about it and saying, we need more research, we need to do this, and we could search for another solution. And there is no such thing as a perfect policy. There's no policy out there that inconveniences nobody, that everybody still gets to drive and we cut congestion. Like, unicorns don't exist, and policy unicorns definitely don't exist. The traffic filters are not perfect. They're definitely not perfect. But it is a question of, do we sit and wait for perfection, or do we do something about it? And I'm definitely of the opinion that we should just try something. Now, these are the details of the scheme. Before I go on to the details, I just want to talk quickly about names and terminology. So, bus gates are in Oxford already. There's 5 of them in the city centre. They've been in since about 1999, about 25 years. And they have 3 exemptions: taxis, buses and emergency services. Everyone knows about them already. That's bus gates. Then you've got LTMs, which you will have heard about unless you've been living under a rock. They're all over Oxford, north, south and east Oxford. They've been in since the 1980s, but most famously in East Oxford in the last couple of years. Then you've got traffic filters, and that's what I'm talking to you about today. There's going to be 6 of them across Oxford from 2024. They've got a whole set of passes and they've got loads and loads of exemptions. So here's the actual map of the traffic filters. The important thing to remember is that every part of the city is reachable by car without going through a filter. So I'll just do a couple of quick routes. If you live in Bicester and you work at the hospital, as many thousands of people do, you come in and you can, from Bicester, and as soon as you hit the ring road, you come in and you can come to the hospital either that way, or you can come to the hospital that way, as you do normally. It won't make any difference and you won't encounter a filter. If you live in, say, Whitney and you work in the North Oxford colleges, you come in round the ring road and then you can go down either of those 2 roads and you won't encounter a filter. So many people's journeys won't particularly change, but some people's will. Okay, so the central filters are going to be operational 7 till 7 every day of the week. So that's Hythe Street, Thames Street, St Cross Road, St Clement Street. And then the outer 2 filters are 7 till 9 and 3 till 6 Monday to Saturday. So they're not switched on in the middle of the day and they're not switched on Sundays. If you pass through a filter without using like your passes, or without using one of your permits, or without having an exemption, you'll get a fine of £35, which turns to £70 if you don't pay it within 21 days. So I just want to talk a bit about the outer 2 filters, because a lot of people say to me, okay, I don't mind the central ones, but I don't like the Marston Ferry Road one, or I don't agree with the Holloway one. Now, a massive proportion of the population of Oxford live in this yellow circle. You have got in Oxford floodplain, 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 and you've got a bit of population in North Oxford, but not actually very dense. You've got a bit of population along the Abingdon Road and in Kennington, and then obviously you've got population on the Botley Road, but not loads. Overwhelmingly, people live in the yellow circle of Oxford. If you don't have those 2 filters, you don't get that change across the whole city that I was talking about earlier, that single point of change which switches us from a negative loop into a positive loop. It's got to be enough of a switch, and everyone's got to do it, and so you need it across the whole city. The real centre of Oxford population wise is probably sort of halfway down the Cowley Road, like round here. So if you don't have those 2 filters, you don't get that change. And then the other thing is those Eastern Arc bus routes that I was talking about earlier with the bus slides. They rely on these roads functioning really well. And so if you want these really fantastic Eastern Arc buses which go around out of Oxford, you have to have those filters, otherwise it doesn't work. So that might help explain to you why those filters are so important. Okay, Now I'm going to talk about exemptions, and exemptions are one of the reasons I really believe in the filters, and they really recognise that some people have greater capacity to change, and some people really need their car and it will be very hard for them to change. So these people's journeys will get faster, and if you're one of these groups of people, there are really important details online that you must look at. I'm not going to go through every single part of the exemption, so you please look at the county council's websites on the traffic filters. So the exemptions which you might expect are emergency services, buses, minibuses and coaches, motorbikes and mopeds, vans like business vans and stuff, HGVs, taxis and private hire. And then you've got blue badge holders and people who are disabled in different ways. So if you receive mobility component of the disability living allowance or PIP or disabled tax class vehicles, you have an exemption. Community health or care workers have an exemption. So that's really important. People going out who are looking like literally providing care to people directly will have an exemption. Qualifying unpaid carers. So if you look after your granny or somebody on a regular basis and you are a paid carer, you can get an exemption. Patients receiving frequent hospital treatments. So if you're doing chemotherapy regularly or something like that and you've got to get to the hospital and back on a regular basis, you'll have an exemption. School students receiving direct travel payments. So that's if you CND, so special educational needs and disability students, if you've got to get to a particular school or if the county helps you with getting to and from school, then you get an exemption of some kind. Car clubs. So this is like your zip car or your co-wheels cars. Total exemption for them. It's got to be a real car club. You can't set up a car club with your mates. The privately owned car is used as a goods vehicle, or a privately owned car used as a goods vehicle on behalf of a business. Basically, if you carry things around, so it's hard for you to change your journey, so you carry goods or tools or equipment around and you use it for a business purpose, then you get an exemption. Then driving instructors, hearses and on-call firefighters. Okay, you will have 3 months notice to sort this out. It's to be able to go to an online thing, you'll be able to see all the details, you have to get your bits and bobs together and you'll be able to apply for your exemption. If you're not very good at doing things online, there will be a phone line to use. There'll be a customer service phone line that the county runs. Day passes. These are another set of things. So these are people who have not got the exemptions. They're a separate thing. Passes mean being able to drive through as many of the filters as you like, as many times as you like for a day. You'll have people in Oxford will have 100 passes a year. People outside Oxford, but in Oxfordshire, will have 25 passes a year. The passes are free and they're totally flexible, so you can use them like a really regular basis if you want to, or you can save them up and use them in winter, or you can use them randomly on days when it's raining. You can do whatever you want. You must register to get them, and you'll be able to see your usage and remaining numbers on like the remaining number of passes you have on an account online. And you initiate a pass day by just driving through a filter. There's no booking in advance or anything like that. You just drive through the filter, the ANPR camera goes, oh, they've triggered one of their passes, and then you're free to drive through all of the filters for the rest of that day. This is the map of where you get the 100 passes a year. So if you live in this green area, you get 100 passes a year. It includes all of Dean Court and up Cumnor Hill. And it includes all of Botley, and then it includes all of Littlemore and Blackbird and Greater Lees, and includes all of Shotover, Risinghurst, Barton and Sandhills and Cutslow. So it's what you would think of as the Greater Oxford, if you like. And you get up to 3 sets per household. If you live outside of this area but inside Oxfordshire, you get 25 passes a year, up to 2 sets per household. If you don't live in Oxfordshire, you don't get any passes. If you don't have any passes, you can still get anywhere you need to get using a non-filter route. You may have to go around the ring road when you didn't otherwise, but chances are you hit the ring road and come in to where you're going anyway. The passes are per car owner for each household. This is the most technical part of the whole talk. Stick with me. I promise it will be over soon. So the way it works is this household has 2 people and they each own a car. And so they get 2 sets of passes each. So 2 owners, 2 cars, 2 sets of passes. This person owns 2 cars So they only get one set of passes because they are one person, and it doesn't matter that they've got 2 cars. They can't just get extra passes for their second car. This household has 2 people, but one of them, and only one of them owns the car officially. They get 1 set of passes because it's 1 person and 1 car. Passes cannot be traded between cars. Anyone can drive the car, doesn't matter, as long as you're insured. And you will need proof of address, which matches the V5C. Okay, now I'm going to talk about practical information to help people plan. And I'm going to give you some ideas and some useful things you might not know about. And I'm doing it in the spirit of, if you drive, you just don't often know about alternatives because you're just in the habit of driving all the time. So you might tell you something and you'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. So buses. There's loads more buses than I realised in Oxford, I have to say. And there's some great things out there. So £2 flat rate bus fare is going to continue until the end of 2024. And I think it's very likely to get continued. So this is central government pays for all bus routes to be £2 flat rate, wherever you're coming from. So you can come a really long way in Oxford for £2. You can get an app or a physical card which combines all of your bus travel across different bus companies in Oxford. So they didn't used to do that, they do that now. The park and ride is really cheap, and I think people don't realise how cheap it is. So for £4 you can get 16 hours parking, your bus tickets in and out for an adult and up to 3 children, or £5 for 2 adults and up to 3 children for all of your tickets in and out and your parking, which I think is amazing. And then if you work for one of these organisations, you can get 10% off or certainly a discount on your bus fares. You might not realise that. And there's a new park and ride opening in Aynsham, 150 places. It will open at some point soon. And then there's also this group travel on the buses. So again, some people say to me a lot of the time, oh, I drive because I've got a big family, and so if I pay for each of their bus fares, it's too expensive for us, and then you have to pay there and back. But actually, you can get a group of 5 people, unlimited travel across all of the bus companies in this zone on this map for £9.60. And I don't think you would get parking in Oxford for very long for £9.60. So it's actually a pretty good deal. And then if you want to use the park and ride only, so this is just parking, not the buses, and you wanted to say cycle in or walk in or run in or something like that, it's only £370 for unlimited parking at all of the park and rides for a whole year, which is not bad actually. So then there's bikes as well, which again will work for some people, and it might work for you if you come in from Oxford from a more rural area and you want to park at the park and ride like I just talked about, and then you whiz in on the bike. So then you have a very quick journey. It'd be pretty cost efficient, and you get your 20 minutes of exercise, cutting your heart disease risk by 40%. So Dash bikes are amazing. They're an e-bike scheme. They include the repairs, the maintenance, and if it gets stolen, they replace it. So they do all your maintenance and your repairs for you, and you get a helmet and a lock from £29 a month, which I think is pretty amazing. The Oxford online cycling map is really great for people who don't currently cycle but want to, but are a bit scared of the main roads. So it tells you all of the low car and car free routes. You can see it really, really easily, and it's great. And often if you're a car driver, you don't realise there's really great routes that you don't know about. So I was talking to a woman in Rose Hill, and she was like, I'd like to cycle, but I just can't bear the thought of cycling down Rose Hill. And I said, well, you could just go the other way, like through Iffley and Meadow Lane. And she just didn't know about it. And so she was like, oh, because you can't go down there in the car, so she didn't know about it. So the online cycling map is really, really great for that kind of story. And then there's joy riders who are great, who will take you out and give you confidence. And if you already know how to ride a bike, they'll just get you good at going around roundabouts, junctions, and kind of getting you used to things. So got lift shares. So lift shares could really work at some big employers. So if you are a big organisation, really, really think about lift sharing, because it saves your staff petrol money, and it also can save time for the passengers, because if you're in the car and you can get half an hour of your work emails done before you even got to work because you're not actively driving. That if you are related to a school, if you're a teacher, governor, or if you know a school, I really recommend looking into Home Run. It is a very, very secure platform designed for school-aged children. So it's designed specifically for sharing the school run, so you get more than one kid in each car, which helps an enormous amount with that peak time traffic. You can also set them up more informally. You can just map your staff postcodes and then ask them if they're okay if they'd like to be part of a WhatsApp group, and do it like that. So it can save, and it saves staff money. Can you do now? So you can examine the map. Definitely think about your journeys. Think about how many times you do your journey. Do you normally use the ring road for that anyway? Is it going to make any difference that the filters are there? Find your V5C, which is your logbook, your car logbook, and check your address is correct. Check you've kept it up to date with the VLA, because you'll need to do that for the online registration thing. Go to oxfordtrafficfilters.co.uk, which is a website I made which pulls together all the information about traffic filters simply, and also look at the County Council's traffic filter pages, because they've got it there. It's really clear and simple. It's quite extensive, and you'll find loads of answers to your questions there. But before I go, I wanted to talk about the fact that things are changing. So this is a private school in Oxford, lots and lots of cars that drive into it right in the centre of town. And they're really pushing their new school bus. They've sorted out a brand new, brilliant bus, and they're pushing it really hard. And they're doing it because of the traffic filters. So policies like this means that organisations will think, how can we change this? How can we support our staff? How can we do this? And things will change as a result. They wouldn't have done it if there hadn't been for the traffic filters. This company is a caring company. They've got their carers on e-bikes around Hillington, and the University Hospital Trust are giving staff free bus journeys and parking from the Park and Ride to either the Churchill, the JR, or Field Orthopaedic Centre. And they're doing it again because of parking, because of the traffic in Oxford, but also because of the traffic filters. So people are changing, things are happening because of these things already. And this school is also in central Oxford, a different one, and it's reduced the number of car trips by, I think, more than 20 a day. Just by talking to their staff, giving them an option to try other things, encouraging them on the train, or encouraging them to get the Park and Ride, encouraging lift sharing, and actually starting to talk about it. And they found that people did it and it was okay. So things are changing, and really let's just have a reminder of what the alternative is. So what we've got is 100,000 homes going up around Oxford, or up already. That is 142,000 more cars on the county roads. That's huge. As I said, it's about 3 Oxfords worth of cars around the county. You can do nothing. You can just cross your fingers and hope for the best. Personally, I don't think that sounds like a very good idea. I think we should come up with some kind of plan. Some people say maybe people will change without restrictions. We shouldn't restrict them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to pay my taxes unless it's the law. Like, people don't. Okay, like, you've got it. Everyone knows this. Come on, like, if you want change and you want it all to happen at the same time, to get to switch from that negative to that positive loop, you're going to involve some rules. So the other one is that people say, oh, let's search for something else, or let's delay this for whatever reason. You're just kicking the can down the road, and the houses are going up. All those people's lives are getting fixed around schools, workplaces, their habits and their ways they live their life. If you fix it around cars and driving into Oxford, it's going to be harder to change it later. Come on, let's change it beforehand. That's obvious common sense. So change does seem difficult when you're faced with it, but here is a picture of Cornmarket, and I think it's probably from like the early 90s, late 80s. We used to have cars and buses going up and down Cornmarket. You can see a car coming out of Ship Street, see the buses going up and down. And then when it was pedestrianised, everyone was like, oh God, what's going to happen? How are we going to cope? Car trips went down into the city centre by 17%, but visitor numbers stayed the same. So basically, people got on the buses, or they did something else, or they just came in. But it was okay. And I don't think there are very many people who would seriously suggest that we should bring back buses onto Cornmarket. And again, Broad Street. So Broad Street is one of the most beautiful streets in Europe, and it used to be essentially a car park, and now it's very, very lovely. So I'm not saying that the traffic filters are going to be easy. I don't think they're going to be easy at all, in fact, especially in the first 6 months. But I do think it is possible. And if we act together, it's definitely going to be possible to change. We have to leave the road space for the people who really, really need it. So if you're able to change, do change. Thank you for listening. I hope it was helpful. I've got this website here called oxfordtrafficfilters.co.uk, and it gives you a simple guide to the filters and some of the stuff I've talked about. you can see our social media there. And I've got some more videos with frequently asked questions and a shorter version of this video, which basically whips through it very fast. Please do share it, and thank you very much. Bye bye.